Have you ever wondered if there's a quick and easy way to make yourself unmanipulatable? Well, there is. I've spent the last 20 years researching self worth and narcissistic relationships. As a coach, author, and survivor myself, I teach simple systems to help empower you in any situation. Whether you're dealing with a narcissistic boss, a manipulative relative, or you're simply wondering what to do when you meet someone new, in this video, I'll share a simple behavior hack you can use anywhere at any time. The surprising sources of manipulation in your daily life, it's not always who you think it is, and the simple mistake that leaves you open to exploitation and how to fix it. First, let's define manipulation. It's deceit designed to control someone, usually in an underhanded way for personal gain. The people most likely to manipulate you are often those closest to you or those with the most social influence over you. Manipulation can come in many forms, but for the purposes of our work here, I'm going to focus on the darker and more toxic type of manipulation that we see from narcissists, because if you can handle yourself and make yourself unmanipulatable to them, everyone else will seem easy. Their manipulation exploits our instinctual social fears, deeply ingrained psychological triggers that evolved to keep us in the group. Historically, ostracism meant death. So we developed these fears as survival mechanisms, but these unconscious buttons make us easy targets if we're unaware. It's important to understand that these fears are closely tied to our capacity for empathy. We care about other people's feelings and our impact on them. However, narcissists lack empathy and they don't respond to these fears in the same way. Instead, narcissists see these fears as weaknesses that they can exploit for their own benefit. Narcissists primarily exploit four psychological triggers: guilt, our empathetic aversion to causing harm; fear, our desire to avoid loss or failure; disapproval, our need for acceptance; and control, our preference for certainty over chaos. By pushing these fear buttons, they leverage our empathetic instincts against us. To become unmanipulatable, we must intentionally recognize these triggers and stop our automatic responses to them. This doesn't mean losing our empathy. It means being aware of how it can be exploited and choosing to respond differently. So, how do you do that? By having a very clear line that differentiates you from someone else, a line that keeps you in and others out. We use the term boundaries for this, but most people do not understand the core concept, and instead they make a huge mistake that opens them up to even more manipulation. So I want to demonstrate boundaries in this super simple way. When you look at this sponge, it might seem like it has a specific line. You can see the rectangular shape. You can see that it is a sponge and that it's its own thing. But when the sponge is submerged, it changes its definitive shape. This is similar to a person without boundaries. Now, let's look at a ping pong ball in the same water. Unlike the sponge, it floats on the surface, distinctly separate from the water. The key difference is not in the water or the manipulation attempts, but in the nature of the object itself. The ping pong ball has a clear line defining its boundary, and the water cannot penetrate. Similarly, a person with healthy boundaries can recognize manipulation attempts and choose not to absorb or to react to them. I also want you to take a quick mental note about this ping pong ball. Is it mean? Is it selfish? Is the sponge nicer? Of course not. But these are the messages that we get when we assert ourselves against manipulation. Narcissists will call you rude or uncaring or selfish when you act like the ping pong ball. Again, weaponizing your social instincts against you. However, you're only usable and manipulatable if you're porous like the sponge. Having healthy boundaries and a clear sense of self is as neutral as this ping pong ball on the water. It is not harming the water. It is not doing anything wrong. So how do we transform from a sponge into a ping pong ball? It's about changing our response to manipulation attempts. And this is where the simple behavior hack comes in. When I work privately with clients, we set up a channel where they have unlimited access to ask me questions. They can email me or text or voice message me as much as they want. And because I typically work with very empathetic and caring people, they are usually hesitant to do this at first. They'll say something like, I don't want to overstep, or I don't want to cross your boundaries. And that is all very kind and considerate. However, it points to why they've found themselves in toxic situations. In essence, they're taking responsibility for my boundaries instead of theirs. So this is what I tell them. You can't cross my boundaries even if you wanted to. And then they usually look at me with like, wait, what does that mean? So I proactively define my boundaries through my actions. I control when and how I engage, keeping my notifications off when I'm not working. My boundaries aren't about controlling their behavior. They're about my actions. I don't try to change what my clients do. Instead, I consistently act in alignment with my own boundaries. This principle of maintaining clear action-based boundaries is the core of true boundaries. They aren't requests or demands that you make of other people. They're about your own actions and your own responses. And this is what ultimately makes you unmanipulatable. The biggest mistake that most people make is thinking that they need to change the other person's behavior. So they try to use words, explanations, requests, justifications to get this other person to do something different. And that never works. That's equivalent to the sponge trying to change the water. You end up absorbing the manipulator's tactics, and they thrive off of that attention. And that's why this behavior hack is so powerful. You set your boundaries through your actions, not your words. This allows you to be more like the ping pong ball, solid and impermeable to manipulation attempts. So let's look at some real life examples of how this behavior hack works in practice. Instead of trying to police someone that keeps calling too late at night, you just say, I turn my phone off after 8. And then you set your phone to do not disturb so you're not bothered. You change your behavior to create the boundary rather than holding them responsible. Or let's just say a coworker constantly interrupts you during your focus time at work. You can just say, I block out from 10 a.m. to noon for uninterrupted work time. Then you close your office door or you put on noise canceling headphones during that time, regardless of their behavior. These examples are just quick scenarios to give you an idea of what this looks like in real life. But please note, these are not one-time events. Every single conversation you have with anyone close to you, even when they're not a manipulator, is a situation where you have to consciously choose to remain your solid sense of self. When you're starting out, this takes a lot of mental and emotional strength. And the most difficult thing is to try to assert yourself in a situation where you've historically been a sponge with no boundaries. This doesn't mean it can't happen. It can and it should, but it's hard and it's supposed to be hard. The energy that you spend on the boundary will be tiring, but it will also make you stronger. When I was first learning this, I was clunky and ungraceful, and I hoped that boundaries would just be this easy one-time thing. And this unrealistic expectation set me up for disappointment and overwhelm. So please know that this is a long game. It will always take energy and stamina to hold strong against someone who wants to manipulate you. You're making yourself into someone who can't be messed with, and you're going to make mistakes. You're going to take on water here and there, and you're going to get tired, and you're going to wish you could just go back to being a sponge. And that is normal. But the more you consciously choose to invest your time and energy into your own boundaries, the stronger you'll become and the easier life will get. If you keep doing this work, eventually there are no manipulators around you anymore because you've made yourself completely unexploitable, and they'll be gone. And then, if a new narcissist shows up, you spot them from a mile away and you repel them effortlessly. If you want to learn more about this, sign up below, and each week you'll get a new 3-minute empowerment plan that includes boundary scripts outlining exactly what to say in specific situations. When faced with manipulation attempts, use the unmanipulatable method. This 3-step process will help you transform from a manipulatable sponge absorbing other people's demands into a ping pong ball with clear, impermeable boundaries. The first step is to recognize the social fear that's being triggered by the manipulation. Identify which of the 4 psychological triggers they're trying to exploit: guilt, fear, disapproval, or the need for control. Next, check in with yourself to determine what you actually want, desire, and feel. This step is about reconnecting with your true self. Ask yourself, what do I truly want in this situation? And how do I honestly feel? The next step is to take whatever action necessary to protect the line that differentiates you from the other person. Set and maintain your boundary through consistent behavior, not words or arguments. As you practice this method, pay attention to how you feel. If you're holding your ground, you'll likely feel a sense of empowerment, even if it's uncomfortable at first. If you're giving in to manipulation, you might feel resentful or anxious. Remember, the goal isn't to control or change the manipulator's behavior. It's about consistently choosing your own actions, regardless of their tactics. Mastering boundaries is an important tool, but now that you've learned more about narcissistic manipulation, you might find yourself thinking, wait, I think I do some of these things. So don't worry, that's a common concern. So click this next video to understand the nuances between normal behaviors and narcissistic traits, and the three subtle but crucial differences that explain why some behaviors look similar to narcissism but aren't.